Good evening, everyone. Sorry for the delay. We are here.
It's me. I'm always delayed. My friends are like, no surprise. My family. Thank you, Phil, for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
We're joined this evening by Rachel. And for people that regularly watch my content, you'll probably hear that Rachel has not a UK accent here in the States. And actually my first American guest, first overseas guest. So for the people watching, so I want to give yourself a brief introduction into who you are and what you do.
Oh, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me. It was such a pleasure. We actually met, Phil and I, at the British Herpetology Advancing Herpetological Husbandry Combo Conference at Drayton Manor this past March, where I was an invited speaker and did 2 talks, one on my tiger lizard research and one on my perspectives of herpetology heroes, the good and the bad, and improvements from a conservation standpoint for the pet trade, and working together with that. We were able to connect, and Phil was kind enough to invite me to a lovely tour of his zoo at Shepbrook Wildlife Park. Help me out, Shepbrook?
Yep,
I want to make sure I'm saying it right. Sorry, I've read it a bunch. I hadn't said it out loud. And that was just a phenomenal experience from everything that you were able to show us. A personal tour from that zookeeper. How could I say no to that? And his incredible herp and invert collection and the bat exhibit. Oh my gosh, the free flying bat exhibit. I've never seen anything like it. And then after our returning from the States and some travels getting lizards in the Netherlands, before we headed back, Phil invited me to talk. So I'm so excited to continue our collaboration and conversations here. My background is environmental science, ecology, and conservation, with a special focus in invasive species, sustainable agriculture, and everything having to do with herpetology. Particularly, I love to work with venomous, big boids, occasionally the python, but I'm a big anaconda boid lover, and I love my colubrids. In general, I look at snake coloration evolution, enrichment for large venomous snake collections, which is a new project of mine. But I have been a hobbyist and keeper of reptiles since I was 4 years old, with box turtles and snakes. My parents bought these for me because I wanted something that wasn't fuzzy. And my parents just said, hey, as long as you take care of it and you're responsible, that's great. And I've always been a very obsessed, very animal retentive pet keeper. And the hobby has been something that's always been a passion of mine. So going from being a hobbyist to a professional scientist, it's become now a lifelong passion of mine and a purpose to bring these two worlds together to protect our hobby as well as the conservation of these species. And, that's what we do at BHS AHH, as well as myself as a board member for the International Herpetological Symposium. I talk too fast for that part. And I've been a board member going on now 4.5 years. And it's a very similar organization, which is bringing hobbyists to the same center as zookeeper, researcher, academic, and veterinarian. And we can work together because this is an incredible field and hobby. And I'm so happy to be here to talk about it and to be able to bring 2 worlds of experience to connect with everything that you do as the same thing, hobbyist and zookeeper. So that's, I guess, a little bit me. I'm from Michigan. It looks like, I can't do it backwards. It looks like a mitten, and then there's like a little dude above it. The only U.S. state with 2 peninsulas. For those, it's what is surrounded by the Great Lakes. So we are freshwater conservation central, sturgeon, fish, and all that. Lots of herps, but your common typical ones. But it's very similar where I'm from Michigan to the same biome that you have in England. So I grew up in a very, very similar habitat with very similar animals. But then I moved to South Florida for 5 years, got very involved in the venomous community, and that's where my training was, moved back to Michigan for 3, and now I've been in Arizona for 8. So I'm in the Sonoran Desert, and it couldn't be more different than where I came from, as well as Florida. But having traveled and lived in these different areas, I get to see, the pet trade as well as the native species and how all these change. So I just started collaborating with you guys in Europe just a couple months ago, but it's my most exciting new adventure. So I'm all about collaboration is my middle name. So and I just love to have fun with reptiles and teaching. And I'm extremely neurodivergent, so I use this energy to drive change in the world, as my parents always told me I could.
No, that's fantastic, and
certainly
these are going to be sort of touching on and stuff. But as you said, we met this year March at the AHH BHS conference. Fantastic conference for people around the world to go to, but lots of people from the UK, but people it's fantastic to get people from the States, people from Germany, and even Belgium.
Hey, Mark O'Shea was there. It was, I mean, it was so many veterinarians. It was phenomenal. The reptile lighting, and their whole organization. They're a huge Facebook group too. That just phenomenal to see Facebook groups become organizations, become symposiums, become collaborators, and it does not matter that we come from different fields or crossover fields. We share the same conservation ethic and a passion for proper husbandry and safe practices. And I don't care if it's your first day owning a reptile or being trained on venomous, or you've been doing this for 50 years, we can easily unite by sharing those common themes.
Yeah, and that's something I really like about that conference. I've been going since its second ever one. I didn't make its first one, but I've been going since the second ever one, and I've seen it grow. And what I've always liked is that whole collaboration thing, and literally that's every year it's a mix of zookeepers, private keepers, vets, researchers, and everyone together collaborating and discussing and networking, which is absolutely fantastic. Sometimes you do hear across the board, sometimes, where people try and put wedges against us, get the zoo industry been, sort of downtrodden on the private hobbyists, but then it's like, and then the hobbyists sometimes going, oh, well, we're better than the zoo industry. And so it's like, well, no, we're all in it for the same things, really. We've all got the same passion.
Absolutely. And I've never met a zookeeper who didn't. Now, I think you could speak to this louder than myself, but I've never met a zookeeper who comes from a reptile background who wouldn't applaud the hobbyist industry and say, most of our breeding came from you, most of our caretaking came from you. We made public indications based on your evidence. And at the same time, the zoo industry is tied to its own naughty little past they want to hide, like the Borneo earless monitor. The research in the zoos gave the poachers the direct line to take them all and find them all and exploit them to their critically endangered status now. So there's always players, good and bad. And we have to realize that it's sharing the ethics and the focus on the species, not showboating ourselves as, look at this, I have this animal, or I can work with this animal, how cool am I? It's a focus on the animal and their conservation above all else. And yeah, you're right. It doesn't matter what we come from. As long as we share that, we can always find common ground.
Yeah, that's it, absolutely.
Love it.
So, what we wanted to sort of discuss was Tegu's, based on the talk you gave at a conference. A lot of us in the UK, reptile keepers, Tegus are popular, especially the black and whites, Argentine black and whites. The reds are fairly popular, goldens less so. Mm-hmm. But also a lot of people kind of misunderstand Tegus. A lot of people think Tegus are monitor lizards when they're not. And we also hear as well of invasive Tegus within Florida, which I know is something that you've been sort of involved with the study of. So what can you tell us about sort of a brief bit on Tegus?
Yeah, I'd love to. So I I'll never forget my good friend Zach, who was one of the original people who trained me on venomous, and we're in South Florida, and we've been working at venomous with a store that had display, and basically he invited me to his house and said, hey, I have venomous, let's start doing training on off days at my house. I'd love help cleaning my very large collection, and he's such an incredible keeper. And we went there, and he's got venomous, all that. He's got his ball python that's like 30 years old. That was his baby. And and then he had an albino tegu. And I still remember seeing that animal and my jaw dropped. And I was like, I've never seen anything like this in my life. And of course it was Snuggly. Her name was Roxy. Snuggly as a puppy dog, the sweetest thing in the world. And I was just blown away, because I've always been someone who likes, there's the hobbyists who like the do not touch aquarium style, right? And then there's the hobbyists who really want to hold them. And I'm that person. I like to really have the tactile, and that probably has a lot to do with my neurodivergence too, is I love holding them, and obviously not my venomous, but it's a different relationship, similar to a fish tank, I would say I don't touch. But I really, really loved that. And so I loved the personality. I loved how you could work with them. And they just blew me over. So I, living in South Florida, within meeting one, I think I had my own within 6 months. And only a few years later would learn about their invasive status and get really passionate about learning what it's about. And then that was a decade ago, August, that I started the study. And now it's a PhD with 3 papers. But basically, they are a truly omnivorous lizard. And this is really unique, because among lizards, which are the most abundant and biodiverse of all reptiles, so they're like the beetles which are have the greatest category of the world, and weevil beetles, obviously. But these guys are the most biodiverse and wildly spread, and they're just incredible. And so because of that, you are going to get more interesting patterns. As the vast majority of lizards are carnivorous, mostly insectivorous. A smaller percentage, and I didn't quote me, I want to say it's like 8 to 15%, if I remember I saw a lecture on this from an amazing iguana biologist about 3-4 months ago. I believe it was about 8 to 15% are herbivores, but I do remember the less than 5% of all lizards are omnivores. It's really rare. And if you look at a tegu skull, you can just Google tegu, T-E-G-U, skull. You'll go Google images, whatever, and you'll see they actually have molars in their mouth. And actually, I take it back. I actually have a skull I could grab and open before the end of the thing. I could show you. I just had my sweetheart who passed of kidney disease a year and a half ago, my big black and white Argentine male. I just had his head taxidermied as a skull by a friend who's an ornithologist and a professional skeletal person. So I can maybe show you guys that real quick at the end. But they have molars. It's phenomenal. And it's a convergent evolution. That means they evolved it completely separately, independently from the mammalian lineage, well, all 3 mammalian lineages. And so they do, despite what a lot of the pet trade unfortunately pushes, they are omnivores. They do need a fruit vegetarian-based diet. And this is very unique. They are the parrots, terrestrial parrots of the rainforests. And they can live from dry to wetland to, deciduous to tropical to temperate. And they're incredibly adaptable with behavior, with diet, and with habitat use. And of course, unfortunately, this makes them a very formidable invasive when they have been introduced in areas like an island on Brazil, off of Brazil, that is owned by Brazil, that was a purposeful introduction. That was a recent event. And then the long-term introduction history going back arguably to 2005 at the earliest introductions, maybe 2000, with established populations and breeding documented in 2012. And that's in South Florida. And now moving up into populations of Central Florida, as well as in Georgia. And then we have a lot of bans and sightings in other states. But really, Georgia and Florida are where we actually have established, if not breeding populations. So it's an issue because they're invasive, but they are also, they're big, they're cool, they're in the pet trade, they're invasive, but there's more to the story. They were also the world's most commercially exploited reptile for more than 50 years, which only stopped about 12 to 15 years ago when it switched to Varanus salvator, which is the Asian water monitor, which is the second biggest lizard next to the Komodo dragon, right? So it's a really interesting species. They've been used as a lab rat extensively with locomotion, spermatozoa, liver function type studies because they're tame, they're easy to obtain, tameable, big, and easy to obtain through the pet trade. So they've been used as lab rats. And if you just Google the peer reviews, you'll see lab rats, invasive species, exploitation of skin trade, and that's about it. And I fell in love with the guys because they are so smart. They have social behavior. They have complex critical thinking. They can see in color and identify shapes to get out of mazes, similar to monitors. Arguably, they're more intelligent than monitors because of a social structure. And I believe it has a lot to do with the frugivory diet of them, finding food and working like parrots in groups and finding food and foraging, on the floor. And this idea of them being solitary animals is really misunderstood. They don't just come together for breeding. They do have huge territorial ranges in the wild. Papers I've seen, something like 2 to 3 kilometer diameter. It's huge. And sometimes only a kilometer circumference. But it's a very large territory compared to the, 1 meter by 1 meter cage most people keep them in, which is obviously why they need a lot of walk around time on your house. But they're a complex animal. They live 20 to 25 years. They weigh, and I apologize, I'm going to have trouble converting the weight, but they're anywhere between about 7 US pounds up to about 15 US pounds in weight, and usually about a meter to a little less than a meter, something like that. Meter is, no. Yeah, they're about 2 meters, I would say between 1.5 meters to 2 meters. Sorry, I'm really bad at math and the conversion. But it's a big lizard. It's a big lizard. It's a diverse lizard. It's a smart lizard. It's an interesting lizard. And owning them, they are somewhere between a cat and a dog. They have incredibly different personalities would be the last thing I'll say about them, which blows me away because I have pulled wild animals born out of the Everglades as invasives, and they're puppy dog tame within hours. And I've hand-raised hatchlings that try to kill me every day as adults, jumping and snapping and chasing me. So they're really an individual. And particularly there are right now there are 10 recognized species. 7 fall under the genus Tupinambus and 3 under the genus Salvator. with 3 being commonly seen in the pet trade, which is Tupinambus tegusin, the golden or Colombian tegu or black and gold tegu, and then Salvatore marinate, the black and white tegu, and Salvatore rufescens, the red and white tegu, often referred to as Argentinian versus Colombian tegus. They are separated. They separated the genus. They recommended 2012. I believe it was accepted around 2015, 2017. And they did that on a combination of mitochondrial work, behavioral and diet work. But the number one thing was actually a scale between the eyes and the nose called a L'Oreal scale. There's 1 for Tupinambus and 2 for Salvatore. And then the shape of all their scales, Tupinambus has very flat plated scales. Salvatore has very raised beaded scales. And so that's kind of how it comes down. But what's interesting is that the Tupinambus tegusin was just split from 1 species into 4, just from museum specimens at the Field Museum in Chicago alone. So we're importing a lot of what we don't know. There probably are more species that we're already importing or that we're working with besides these 3. So it's a big issue. I've even seen government agencies frequently not be able to properly sex them or identify them. When they get one or the other, as well as in the pet trade. So that's kind of it's a big hot conundrum, and it's fascinating to study. So I've been doing it way too long, but I don't have a plan to stop. And I do own them as pets. As I said, I had 3, and we lost one to kidney disease about 1.5 years ago after 11 months of fighting and lots of money for my baby Omega. But now I have his skin in his skull as an education piece, and then I still have a big red tegu who's very, very mean and hand raised, in my example there. And then I have an albino tegu with about 80. He was born with neurological issues. He has about 80% blindness, but it's not physical, it's neurological. So he's a very derpy walk into walls situation versus the red one who's out to get me. So it's fun. I like to do videos of them and share a lot about the animals, good and bad, because my husband and I have probably rescued and rehomed somewhere between 50 and 60 over the last 8 years. So that's my little tegu talk.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm a big lover of tegus. My parents, they've got 3 currently. They've got 2 black and whites and a red. One of the black and whites doesn't like them at all, and one loves everyone, sort of thing. The red loves everyone. It all tends to be all right as well, sort of thing. But yeah, they are just they're different personality. And the 2 black and whites are both free-homed ones that they took on. As a black and white, they did buy that as a young juvenile. Although it was missex, they were sold to them sex as female, and it's definitely not female, it's definitely a male. Massive jowls on its head. As growing up,
and the buttons were like the size of quarters. The glands on either side of the cloaca, sorry for those who don't know, on tegus are extremely pronounced and males, and you would not believe the adults with large buttons and jowls I've seen at government agencies as frozen specimens that were missexed, and I'm like, oh my gosh, how can you? It's just like, this is 2 minutes of training. But they have femoral pores, these glands in the legs, and then the cloaca. But you can basically just put your finger down and feel on the outside of the cloaca. They're buttons. That's exactly. They remind me of that candy. I don't know if you have it in the UK. I hope you don't, because it's horrible. There's this old traditional candy, and it's like little. They call them buttons, and they're like yellow, pink, and blue, and they're little buttons, and they're on a sheet of paper. And no matter how you pull them off, they always have paper stuck on them. They were from like the 50s, I think. Okay.
I don't recognize
when
that.
I tell people that, they go, oh, buttons, because they're literally the same size and feel as often tegu buttons. So you'll have to look up horrible button candy later, because that's always my analogy. They are buttons, though. When you think like, what's a button? I'm like, that's the reference. I think it's the button candy, but that they're calling it. But that blows my mind. And particularly the misidentifying of species. I see them sold all the time or advertised all the time on the pet trade crap, on fauna classifieds and king snake. And they're trying to sell basically because Tupinambus tegus and the Colombian black and gold, they range from black and gold to black and white in coloration. So people will sell the ones that are less pretty, the black and whites, as an Argentine black and white, because they're about 4 times the price, right? And unfortunately, you're selling what's usually a velociraptor versus a chill friend, because as we know, with personality, it goes by the species than the individual. And I've met, I think, 2 friendly adult Colombian tegus in my entire life. While I would say, 80% of Argentine black and whites or red and whites are very chill. So, but not all of them. Like the red I have, I post videos all the time. People are like, oh, check your husbandry. He's angry. And oh, you're not treating him right. All that. And I'm like, Like, this spoiled bugger, are you kidding me? No, this is personality. He's just I'll use, as you said, I was allowed to swear a little bit. We call him high walking bitch because no matter where he's at, or if he's walking around the house or outside getting his enrichment, the second he sees you, he's almost on his tiptoes. His belly, he's a big red. He's tucking and sucking his gut like he was trying to fit into a girdle. And it's so funny. He just walks around like that, and you're like, come on, man. But it's quite funny. I've never seen that. And clicker training has worked with him. He has calmed down. He is trainable, but I don't think, I've talked to several other large-scale long-term breeders, and we all kind of agree. We don't think he'll change, but he's a great example when I do education and I show the personality variations, because when people see a calm, chill Tegu all the time, they don't realize that they have 1,000 newtons of jaw compression. They don't realize what they're capable of. And I do not like exotic animals being advertised as safe, especially when a Tegu, truly like a monitor, is something that is for advanced keepers based on their life, their size, their space, their needs, and what they're capable of. They might be chill, but I get infuriated when I see people rolling eggs around the house going, look at it chase the hat in the bowl. Isn't it cute? And you're like, you're teasing a wild animal with food. You're teaching it to be aggressive and chase things like toes. Yeah, not cute. So that's some of my arguments with it, is that someone once rudely told me on one of my videos, but I still think it's one of the funniest comments ever, that Tegus are the Temu monitor lizard. And I guess they can be when they're really like, you think of the dopey, sleepy, silly kind, but when you've had them jump 3 feet out of a cage and snap at your face, and I've had to rip my arm open twice in the hospital from holding them down and sampling blood on 600 of them, and mouth swabs another 150. I don't think they're Temu monitors. They truly are capable of anything a monitor is. What's nice is they are not as reactive or flighty. They have this ability to chill down and use more critical thinking, while a lot of monitors kind of always stay flighty and have that flight or fight response. Like, monitors remind me more of a horse, while Tegus can truly have more of a dog personality. But that's just my experience, but it's not guaranteed.
Yeah, and it's like with any animal, like, when you describe things as, or they become puppy tame or something, there's always exceptions. There's always going to be that one that just will never ever tame down, sort of thing, and will always just be a bit more highly strung. But that's just nature. That's just the way they are.
And that's what, if you're going to own the animal, let it live and respect the way it is. Like with him, I don't really hold it. If I'm moving him somewhere, sure, but I don't, pet him, snuggle him, grab him, make him stay with me. Like, I don't treat him like the other lizard who wants to snuggle on the couch and hang out with me. Like, he's given his space. When he gets enrichment, he's walking around, I just stay the heck away. I let him do what he's doing. And I think it's important to just let animals be animals. And through that, we can reduce a lot of stress. Oh, cool. I just actually got the veterinarian I was talking about just popped in with an approval. And so we're going to get to talk about her. Yeah. Okay, cool. She's phenomenal. All right, cool.
So you mentioned everything about sort of taking out for animal education and stuff, and I know you do various conventions and stuff like Comic-Con, even like things like Comic-Con and stuff, where you're doing animal education there. What sort of things are you doing with that?
Thank you. So one of the things that I did is when I went from being a college professor of 7 years to going back to my PhD about 2.5 years ago. In that transition, I decided I really wanted control of my research and my productions, as well as the students I was mentoring. I had great support from the university I was leaving and the one I'm going to, but with funding and research support of my students. But in general, I just really wanted my name on things. So, and I wanted to be able to better fundraise to do these type of outreach, because I really believe in a 3-scale approach. 3 scales, right? 3-point approach, which is going to be research, education, and public outreach. And so in general, what we do is I started Pikstein Laboratory for Conservation Research and Education, which we shortly call Pikstein Lab. And I'll spell that for the audience. That's P-I-K, so P as in Peter, I-K-S-T-E-I-N. So that would be piksteinlab.org. Check us out. My husband does the website. We're still in process here, but we're getting better. Still a new organization. We only opened about 2 years ago. And but in general, there's no location. It's me, my husband, some colleagues, some volunteers, and really the goal is to mentor people on projects and that can lead to research, and then to help me volunteer and assist for things that are public outreach events. So I take everybody from all age citizen scientists to undergrads to a small selection of high school students with, of course, their parents' permission, all that. I like to work with the ones who are like the future ecologists and stuff. I was a high school teacher for 13 years, actually, off and on through that. So I taught a lot of grade school, particularly biology, and loved teaching kids, but administration scared me away, not the kids. So with all of that, I miss the classroom. And so Pikstein Lab, we do everything from bio blitzes at libraries where we lead the direction. I've done talks like, snake safety from your backyard to the hiking trail where we bring specimens in. I am one of the 2 directors, along with my best friend, Caitlin Garcia, for the Phoenix Fan Fusion, which is our biggest comic convention here in Phoenix, Arizona. We get just as many people as the biggest global, the original Comic-Con, which is San Diego. We saw over 134,000 people this year. And we actually manage a 6,000 square foot hands-on learning space that not only has live reptiles like rattlesnakes and venomous snakes that can be observed up close and safe, but also more than 200 research scientists and professionals in STEM and academics and teachers on over 70 panels that are STEM related. So the sneaky science hidden in the fun of fandom. And then managing this 6,000 square foot space with everything from like Lowell Observatory and spacewalk through government non-government organizations for space exploration to local zoos, organizations, nonprofits, universities. Really phenomenal. And so we offer basically a hands-on all-age learning area where you can do everything from see live animals up close and safe, as well as working with fossils, testing out a moonwalk, really to make STEM, I call it the Ratatouille model. I love that movie. And it's about, the whole point of that movie, the mouse cooking, right, was that, it's for everybody. And it is. We're there to make science not just palatable, but to make people take ownership of it, particularly so we can counteract some of the really horrific things that are happening in the United States right now, like our anti-vaccine propaganda, allowing things like measles to return. People do not trust medical and healthcare and science. So we also hosted an event called Drinks with Scientists during it. And the whole idea is just getting people to mingle with 4 stage programs by scientists talking about their research and sharing live animals and specimens. So that's my favorite thing. We just did it first week of June. But I love managing that because we are literally reaching tens of thousands of people in 3 days. And they're getting to have fun with science, get up close to these exotic animals, talk to real scientists, and break down that barrier between the academic and the public, which is so important to build those bridges now more than ever. And so we do things like that. We also do outreach programs, places like Gamers Guild, which is like a really big professional comic shop where they host like gameplay nights for like Magic the Gathering and Dungeons and Dragons. We do fandom talks like Reptiles of Star Wars, and then we talk about real desert conservation with native species. And we bring in animals and we bring in specimens, and it's free. We've also offered additional things like skull identification classes, insect pinning classes, owl pellet dissections. And this is for all ages. You might go, hey, I did that in school. Not everybody got to dissect an owl pellet in school. And you would be surprised how many people are really eager for hands-on learning in science. So this is just some of the things we do. And I get so excited about everything. But I love bringing this type of material hands-on up front to people, getting people to like science and understand it, see it from a new perspective. And not only that, but to get to understand and appreciate our endemic biodiversity, environmental issues, and how they, as a citizen scientist, can be a part of the change. And so I will tell people I'm always much more of an educator than I am a researcher, but I see research, public and outreach as tools with education to make the biggest impact. And that's what's most important to me is really making a difference. And I think these initiatives make a huge deal. And my friend I mentioned, who's the co-director, she owns a company with her boyfriend, Nate. They own a company called Brahms Bug Box LLC, and they are phenomenal as well. And they do, the bug pinning classes and stuff, but it's all, eco-sourced, sustainable. They make the wood, they make the glass, they have everything in a closed loop. And it's more than just art. It's art plus science plus sustainability. So I think that's amazing, is showing people these things can be done and bringing people into our tribe of really wanting to be a part of these exciting initiatives and things we do. So yeah, I guess the public and social media is my new classroom, but I think that reaching a wider audience and having fun with a wider audience with science makes a difference. And not to mention, the whole time, we're obviously being very biased towards reptiles and spreading lots of reptile love and having specimens specimens as well as, like rattlesnake rattles and bones and teeth and skins. as well as live animals that can be held or viewed safely behind plexi if they're venomous, at each event. And I think that's essential. So, yeah.
No, that's amazing. Definitely.
Thank you.
Especially with doing that. We don't really do that so much in the UK, as far as I'm aware. We have animal outreach and we have animal outreach. My parents do stuff like that. As I've taken it to like universities, to the students or the parties or to the fates and stuff, but not necessarily to massive events like that where you're going to be impacting. Well, you just said like thousands of people, over 100,000 people at one event. It's like that's unheard of, really, in the UK sometimes. But people that perhaps don't come into or haven't thought about coming into contact with the wider natural world, and then getting that info, because you always hear, especially when it comes to the venomous, and especially suppose it's like Arizona and Texas, where you got rattlesnakes and you got highly venomous snakes, or all snakes are dangerous and stuff, and you see all sorts of things. Certainly in the UK, we see all sorts of things come out in terms of how many people get bitten by rattlesnakes every year, or the rattlesnake roundups that happen.
Absolutely.
And stuff, and seeing lots of negative stuff. So again, that positive message out about them to people that perhaps wouldn't necessarily see that on a day-to-day thing is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, and I want to add one more thing I think will really impress the audience, because a lot of people, you can go to an Arizona Diamondbacks baseball game, and the Phoenix Zoo is wonderful. They'll come out, they have every rattlesnake species of the state, including the Western Diamondback out there, so people can see them. There's lots of great education. One of our closest friends, Brian and Liz Hughes, with Rattlesnake Solutions, is the biggest relocator of rattlesnakes in Arizona, if not the West Coast. And they are doing, incredible things, installing rattlesnake-proof fencing, doing lots of education, and actually working huge on research regarding social impacts and influences with, human perceptions of snakes and things like that. They do tons of that, and I think it's really, really cool to see people like that. Whether it's a zoo or Rattlesnake Solutions, bringing animals to events, to different things, and talking about this. But what I was really proud about when we, kind of took up their, MO for how they were doing education to Comic-Con the last few years, is we were able to work at my own university where I'm doing my PhD. It's Loma Linda University in California. And they're a 98% medical university. We're the weird 2% who studies rattlesnakes and rattlesnake behavior and stuff. And I'm doing tegus, but, a side questing with rattlesnakes. And so I'm under Dr. Bill Hayes is my PI, and he's one of the most well-known venom researchers, rattlesnake researchers in the world. He's the one who's done a lot of work on expelling snake myths, such as babies are more dangerous than their adults, babies can't meter their venom. Really, snake venom metering and complexity of venom of rattlesnakes is his work going on 30 years, as well as the more modern work by Dr. Emily Taylor with Project Rattlecam, and we're all buddies. It's just fabulous. But what I was excited, we weren't able to do it this year, but the last 2 years, we were able to have a Loma Linda table in our area and have some of our own snakes brought in. And we actually, because our study was actually my lab mate Chelsea and my lab mate Kale, their studies had to do with neonates. And so they were actually catching, mothers, and then the mothers would give birth, and they would capture the mother and the babies that have just emerged, and then sample them, and then release them at the same GPS site. Give them a little meal in the meantime. They get some hydration. They're more likely to kind of bounce back there. And of course, done with all the IACUC permits and approvals and all that. Don't do this at home. But because they were in the lab the last 2 years during this study, we were actually able to bring a mother rattlesnake with her 4 neonates in a box and have that on display. And people got to actually see maternal care in rattlesnakes in real time up close. We only did it for a little. It was a quick display that was brought in and out, obviously for the mother's stress. But they had all their little tails banded with the different colors for they're for behavioral studies. They're not being, they're being used for behavioral responses based on locale and things. But you get to actually see her babysitting her babies sitting on her body. And I thought that was so cool that we had taken what we'd seen other people do, and we were able to use our research and actually show maternal care. And I don't know, to my knowledge, anybody else who's done that. I thought that was phenomenal. And I don't care who anybody was that weekend, tens of thousands of people. They told that every single person went, oh, how could you not? The little teeny buttons on their tail, different kind of button, right? The little buttons on their tail, their rattlesnake formed, and they were just like this biggie, and the mommy's this big. They were Southern Pacifics, and it was just really cute. You'd have one little baby in the corner, 2 sitting on top of her, 1 next to her, and they were choosing to be with the mother, and it was phenomenal. And I think seeing so many people do similar education in similar ways where you get to get really up close to the animals, and the animals are chill and comfortable and not stressed. They're not smacking the cage and biting and rattling. I mean, they might rattle a little bit here and there, but they're not smacking their faces. They're not stressed. They're not huffing. And if they do show that kind of stress, they are covered. They're put under the table. They're given a break. Animals are rotated. Like, it's all about the animal first. And so I think there's a really right way and a really wrong way to do public education and outreach. And in particular, I always ask, what's the intent? You know, if the intent is to share and scare and awe, you know, ooh, look how dangerous they are. You know, look how angry and aggressive that animal is. You're not doing it right. I want to dispel myths and have someone go, I didn't realize rattlesnakes were good mums. I didn't realize that they're just going to sit there like a chill. Is it alive? What? It's not even moving. Like, I like when people see that other side and we tell them, yeah, you know what? Proper keeping, even if venomous, incredibly boring. Incredibly boring. I can understand because my animals are happy and healthy. And I mean, my own rattlesnake, we have a Sonoran Sidewinder that was gifted to us when an educational program closed at a school. His name's Zigzag Scallywag. And he only rattles for a millisecond when he is hooked between his cage and the bucket for a quick change a few times a year because he doesn't really, you know, he doesn't need much. He's a desert species. Yep. And so it's a little, that's it. That's all he gives you, you know? And most of his care, including the maintenance and the water, can all be done like through sides of the cage and different doors. So I don't really even need to touch him at all with the hook more than maybe 4 or 5 times a year. And that's it, you know? And he will actually follow the vacuum. He's very active. He's very social. I've never, ever seen him strike at anything but food, you know? But, I mean, he's so reactive that you open that door and bam, 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 bam. So, like, good luck free handling that, free handlers. I've never seen him do it with the Sidewinder because they wouldn't make it. Yeah, but I think that's just, you know, it's how you do it. And my Sidewinder actually got to go to Phoenix Fan Fusion for the first time this year for his first ed, and he did really good. He just sat there and he was like right up against the glass, not rattling, just looking at everybody, and just, you know, just people were amazed that they're just that calm because they're used to being left alone and treated well and given their space as they deserve in captivity.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And as I said, yeah, so many people, especially that aren't in reptile circles, don't think of reptiles as being maternal or paternal in some cases as well for some species. As often just think of them as, especially when it comes to venomous snakes, they're just cold-blooded killers. They're just all they want to do is bite things, and that's it. You know, they're not going to look after their young, and just then seeing that, just like I said, dispels those myths straight away. I sort of think that in the UK, we've got a zoo in the UK called Crocodiles of the World, and for most reptile people, we know various croc species. Well, all croc species are really good parents. And what Crocodiles of the World done was literally when they bred their American alligators, they brought babies back in with the parents, sort of thing, so that people could then see baby alligators with the parents.
That's amazing.
They also done an experiment with putting in baby spectacled caiman in with them as well. Wow. Because of the potential issue of spectacled caiman becoming sort of naturalized or invasive into parts of Florida. So they're like, well, let's do an experiment to see what our alligators do with baby spectacled caiman in with them. And they found that the caiman were much smarter and would come out when the alligators went around, sort of thing. But sometimes would pretend to be the baby alligators to get the food.
We call that, niche partitioning in ecology.
Yeah. In
order to avoid competitive exclusion by competing for the same resource, you have to niche partition, which means go at different times of day, go at different seasons. Yeah, ways to utilize different parts of the tree like birds do. Yeah, that's phenomenal. I think that's so interesting. And, you know, when it comes to the perception and how it's shown, it can be so warped one way or the other. And I think the biggest thing the reptile community faces that's a problem as a whole is that, yes, we have this long misunderstood, you know, aspect of our animals and our hobby. And of course, the 80s and the black market trade and all that. But in general, you know, our biggest issue is that we are not having people with the same motives go into the trade, and that the people who do the bad things get all the press. And honestly, our biggest enemy is the fact that, you know, sex and, you know, shock value, sex and violence sells. And, you know, scary reptiles will always be something that drives, you know, attention and clicks. And so Unfortunately, when people are going to use that versus the truth, it creates a problem. So for your audience and everybody listening, if you are like, I want to know more about rattlesnakes and maternal care, I got two sources. One, go immediately right now to projectrattlecam.org, because at this very moment, you can see live rattlesnakes at 3 den sites, one in California, one in Colorado, and that's a mega site, and the Pennsylvania mega site. There are 3 different species of rattlesnake, and the Pennsylvania camp just premiered, I think was like not even a few weeks ago. And these are live cameras. Each is a multi-million-dollar investment of grant funding with a big, we're talking, who's ever seen Meerkat Manor? Okay, amazing. Love that documentary. Same kind of camera. Woo, it moves like this. It's on a big platform. These are areas that no humans, no hikers, they are undisclosed, protected areas. So there is nothing but a robot looking at snakes as they emerge from mega dens, as these rattlesnakes come together. Basically, they come together prior to the winter, and the goal is get below the frost line or die. So snakes, we've seen this in research with water moccasins as well as rattlesnakes, that they scent trail babies to adults back to den sites. And if they get below the frost line, they live. So then they come up and they emerge in the spring, and they'll lay out and bask, and they have these huge congregations. So when you go to Project Rattlecam, what you're about to see, if it's not already happening, is you are going to see emergence of the snakes have already emerged. You're going to start seeing the babies emerge, and you're going to see babies surfing across seas of adults and massive co-parenting events. It is phenomenal, and it's real snake behavior, undisturbed by humans. And I think people are, they get named as the snakes, get named by the public. It's a great initiative. And when I mean live, there are actually live volunteers, mostly researchers, scientists, and then citizen scientists now too, who 24 hours a day, except for a 15-minute window of adjusting the camera, I believe that happens in the middle of the night, are actually live, moving this around. And even more so, they are dealing with the commentary live. So people get their questions asked in real time. They are getting the camera moved to interesting parts in real time. If they're on there going, hey, what's that in the far right screen? The scientist will move the camera for them. So this is an interactive live wildlife cam, and you get to see all the behaviors I'm talking about. And Dr. Emily Taylor, who's at the California Southern College, Cal Poly, as a phenomenal person and a good friend and colleague. And she established this. She's actually a physiologist, and she has a long background in snakes. She is actually one of the prodigies of Harry Green. So who is, of course, one of our biggest reptile people in the U.S. Harry's an amazing human being as well, and they've collaborated on so much. And so it's amazing to see what we're seeing. And one of the coolest things coming out is things like communication by cheek vibration. The snakes, mom, baby to mom, aunt to mom, we're not talking breeding, we're not talking sexual, we're talking communication across all levels, ages, and genders, vibrating cheeks as they go by and over the head. We don't know what it means, but there is a complex communication happening among snakes that we haven't even tapped into. So I am so excited to share that. And then my other thing that I would love to share is my own lab mate I mentioned earlier, who's soon to be in the next few months, Dr. Chelsea Martin. And she is the one who discovered, along with our PI Bill Hayes, social buffering in reptiles, which was published in Southern Pacific rattlesnakes. And this is well known in mammals and in humans, the idea that we can reduce our stress level and, to start with, and over time by being around buddies. If you're going to go through, let's say, a car accident or a kidnapping or something horrible, house fire, and you're with friends or family versus alone, you're going to buffer that stress better. That was never discovered or published on in reptiles, and they were able to discover that in rattlesnakes, hilariously, with the observation of collecting snakes from the field for research. It was noticed that these snakes tended to rattle less when they had a buddy in the bucket versus being by themselves. So they designed an entire lab study where a snake gets a heart rate monitor strapped to it, cortisol levels taken before and after. They put this animal in a bucket, and they built this wooden apparatus where you basically have 2 rubber band wooden arms. So the bucket sits in this thing it's held, and the snake's in the bucket, because you have to make it, obviously, a consistent scientific experiment of disturbance. So the animal's wearing a heart rate monitor. It's in the bucket for a period of time to allow the heart rate to go to, from stress of being moved to a baseline. And these are animals that are actually pulled from the wild, experimented on, and then released. Again, as I mentioned with the mother and her babies, which was a different study. So they're put into a bucket, and I'll give the variables in a second. And then basically you pull back the lever and it goes dong, dong. And so it disturbs the bucket with 2 smacks. And then basically the animal's recorded to see the heart rate spike and then go back to level. So we're looking at how high that spikes and then how quickly it reduces back to the baseline. And then the animals were tested by themselves with species that were the same species, known and unknown, same and different species, a few variables like that. And then the control is quite funny. It was a rope of similar diameter. Because, of course, right? And they were able to show scientifically statistic results that were significant that, these snakes do have lower stress with friends, and they're buffering that stress with friends. And this was phenomenal. This only came out a couple years ago, and it was so viral. It was my PI Bill actually pulled the data on it, and it was more popular for their journal Frontier than the next 5 million articles. It was in the 98th, 97th percentile of publications for that journal, which is one of the biggest in the world. And if you just type in rattlesnakes prefer friends, you'll see every single major network covered it, Smithsonian to Nat Geo to BBC to CNN, just everybody. It was wonderful. And I think that with Project Rattlecam, because of course Chelsea and Emily collab on a lot of things and a lot of articles too, there's the perception changing on rattles and on snakes. But then I'll add one more note. It doesn't take much to stop that momentum. This year, because of early warming, we've had some early emergences. There isn't more snakes. No, the rattlesnakes are declining. There isn't more of them. There's just, when you have early warm weather, snakes emerge and tourists come early. And we have not only had a lot of hikers die from heat exhaustion. I just saw, Grand Canyon and South Mountain right by my house. Grand Canyon's 3.5 hours away north. And South Mountain's not even 30 minutes from me, south. And we've had hikers die at both locations just in the last couple of weeks. So, the same thing's happening in California. Don't quote me. I know we've had at least 3 rattlesnake deaths in California since January. There might be a 4th now. And all of them have reasonable explanations. A young person whose heart rate was way too high, elderly people with complications couldn't get the antivenom quick enough. And despite medical treatment, they all died. And so it's really unfortunate. And despite being able to, medically explain why this happened, how they got bit, the media doesn't care. They just go, rattlesnakes are everywhere. The bites are up there. Ah! And they want to project this misconception that there's more snakes when they're not. And it's really frustrating because you can see this. It just squishes so much effort. So I think, when I look at it as a problem, if I would say, what is the one thing that the reptile industry faces that's so negative? It's that this misunderstanding that we are, dangerous people, that we work with dangerous animals, and we're here to scare you. Because unfortunately, just like sharks, it has been greatly misrepresented in bees and, pit bull dogs a long time, and it's not matching the science. And I think it's time we chip a little harder away at this issue to really show them who we are. And, that, yes, our field includes a spectrum, but we're trying to cut off a section of it, whether it's laws, restrictions, regulations, or just more loud social media. We want to stand. We are not the Tiger Kings. We are not them. And people should applaud what we are doing, whether it's conservation education or proper husbandry. We are helping zoos. We are helping conservation. We love our trade. We love our animals. And, I think it's time that we start being a little louder about this, because it's frustrating to take so many steps back for a few bites.
Absolutely. And that kind of transitions to, the next kind of 2 topics really, in terms of education stuff. You agree? Is it safety is sexy? Is that as well? We don't see it so much in the UK in terms of venomous free. There's some, but we don't see it so much because we have DWA laws. So to keep a rattlesnake, you need a license in the UK, and anything that's deemed highly venomous. So I don't see it so much, but I do see sometimes some people doing the free and promoting that. But you have a whole group for it is called Safety is Sexy, isn't it?
Yeah, so I think that the full name of that group, I'm trying to think of it. Safety is Sexy, Reptiles, Herps, and Venomous Reptiles and Exotics. But if you just go on Facebook and type in Safety is Sexy, you'll find us. I started this group, excuse me, it'll be, 2 years this coming fall, so it's still quite new. Or 3 years, I forget now. The time goes by quick. But basically, I started a few months after the famous inland taipan bite by the infamous Jeffy Leibowitz of South Carolina, United States. For those who don't know, this was a man who got a Facebook group of 50,000 something people. I believe it's called Venomous Snake Classified or something crazy. I forget the formal name of his group, Venomous Snake something. And basically, this man is racist, sexist, homophobic, offensive, And so he's made a platform by being that and also free handling venomous and doing this in his cockroach, I'm not exaggerating, cockroach infested apartment where he keeps his venomous in Tupperware containers that were filthy, Tupperware containers, and he would freehold them on videos. I'm talking about just hands. I will mention that I do consider free handling if they're wearing bite-proof gloves because they are not bite-proof, but he is just straight bare-handing it. He often would have a hook in the background. He'd be like, I don't use this. This is for idiots. And he'd put it aside. His famous quote, excuse my language, is anti-venom is for pussies, because he was mocking people who not only opposed free handling, but who had the insight to keep their own anti-venom. He was bit by a juvenile taipan, and within hours of him saying the anti-venom for pussies comment for the 100th time, was on the internet going, does anybody have anti-venom? And begging for it. He delayed going to the hospital. I believe it was at least 3 to 4 hours, which you never want to do for a bite. It's just like, I mean, inland taipan for your viewers, drop for drop, most venomous snake in the world. Okay, you can kill 100 men easily with one bite, if not more. So, he basically, I'm sure did not have, any plan or protocol for getting bit, despite free handling snakes. We're talking like 3 rattlesnakes in his hand, putting them on his neck, like just, and then the fact that he was verbally and socially on media attacking those who opposed him. And one of his biggest opposers was our good friends at the Kentucky Reptile Zoo, who are one of the largest venomous snake research and venom extractors for anti-venom. And so they're a private zoo. So when he got bit, they were not pressured like other zoos and organizations by a board to forcibly give over their anti-venom. They loudly denied it and said, you're not getting anti-venom from us. And that's because this is rare, this is expensive, it's hard to get. And our employees work with these animals every day as safely, and if they get bit while we're waiting for more anti-venom, our employee's going to die. And you, sir, have made yourself such a person on the internet that we are denying you this. Now, he was able to get anti-venom from several other organizations. He did live. He was back to free handling a friend's cobra in less than 2 weeks on social media. Then he bought a serval. The first one had gotten away. It's a wildcat. Then the second one mauled him. He made posts about that. He posted all the mauling pictures covered in blood and then said that he had pounced on a bear to save the serval. Like, this man this is a public school teacher, I'll mention, as well. So South Carolina has a lot of problems. This is just the tip of the iceberg, which is why they're not dealing with it. But a lot of your other big name free handlers, like, Tyler Nolan and Chandler and all these other just people who keep me up at night on certain nights, mostly because of what they do to the industry, not because of anything direct. They're doing things that are just so radically horrible on purpose, and they are only doing it because they want attention. And so we get into this topic of, okay, do they have the right to free handle? Do they have the right to put it on the internet and influence herpetology and laws and bans? Bans that not only can deny hobbyists the right to have access to these animals, but these laws trickle up to those of us in academics, zoos, research institutions. They affect conservation laws. Politicians love, again, back to the shock value, love to take shock value incidences. I lived in Florida when that Burmese python killed that child. That python was underweight, sick, covered in mites, in an unlocked cage in a child's bedroom. Those people had drug and gun arrest issues that were associated with this confiscation. They were charged formally and convicted on child neglect, as they should have been. But something like that, again, politicians take that, they use that article to put the Burmese python on the Lacey Act and cause further restrictions and bans in Florida for that Burmese python in the pet trade. It was a invasive species issue, and they were already so immersed in the Everglades that they aren't going to solve it. It's been there since the 70s. But what they do is they make laws. And so with the laws and bans, because a politician comes in, at this time it was Rick Scott, the governor, and he came in on his big platform and he was like, I'm going to make it. They love it because they go, look at this big hysteria. I'm going to take it and go, I'm going to save your pets. I'm going to save your kids. This is my platform. They love to do this with anything exotic animals. And so what happens then is they take it, they make it a political platform. So when the laws happen, do they listen to us? Absolutely not. They use no science, no logic. So you get these animals like African rock pythons were put on the list, but not the yellow anaconda, which like they didn't look at any ecology when they made the bans for invasive species. They're like, that one looks big. That one has the same name. So they're making just radical aspects. And then these things, again, trickle up to affect zoos and institutions. And it is something that affects everybody. And not to mention, I'm a hardcore advocate because I work with organizations and I'm friends with organizations like Asclepius Snakebite Foundation, National Snakebite Support on Facebook. They'll help you with any questions about venomous bites for pets or people and your kids. There's great resources out there. And these organizations are very loud and proud, like I am, that free handling is a developed world privilege. Snakebite takes hundreds of thousands of lives a year globally. And organizations like Asclepius are working to train doctors, fund anti-venom, connect resources. More than 90% of the United States doctors in an ER situation do not know how to treat snakebite. They are sending people home in Texas on a regular basis with Benadryl for copperhead bites, causing them to have organ failure, toe loss, and even death when it's unnecessary. So there's amazing, amazing doctors like Nick Brandoff and Spencer Green, who are literally leading organizations and conferences like Venom Week and Houston Venom Conference we just had. And I mean, when you go to this conference, it's the people who study snakebite, the people who make and distribute the anti-venom, the scientists who study the venom like my PI, Bill Hayes, people who study the ecology and behavior like us. And then you also have people like snakebite victims. I got to meet 6 copperhead snakebite victims. And these were people whose kids had been bit. They'd been personally bit. Their mother-in-law had been bit. And we're talking like you live in North Carolina or Texas and you're just going to the car. Oh, I forgot something in my car. And I'm just going to go throw my flip-flops on and go just run out to the car and grab something out of it. And then, oh, something just hit my foot. What is that? Oh, that hurts. Well, that was a copperhead. And now you're in a life-threatening situation. And even if you don't die with or without the antivenom, of course, there is risk for organ failure. Snakebite is serious. I tell people it can age your body like chemotherapy. It's really traumatic. You don't just get bit, get antivenom, and oh, I'm all okay now. The biggest thing I noticed among these people, besides the fact that, of course, they got the best medical care and were there to share their stories, all being direct, patients of Dr. Spencer Green, it really shocked me because how much it affected the PTSD. These are people who all stood up there and said either they didn't have a problem with snakes, they weren't scared of snakes, or and none of these people were huge snake haters. But because something so simple had affected their life so traumatically, they were not the same. These people truly were more mentally affected than physically affected, at least from my experience talking to them. And people don't realize the toll snakebite takes in these incidental deaths. And what's happening, of course, for copperheads is they are having a massive spring emergence. They eat cicadas. They emerge when the cicadas emerge, and they're basically, cicada spends 7 years underground going, I'm a happy little bug. And it emerges to go, look, I can mate. And the copperheads are often waiting and eating them the second they emerge. Nope, right out of the soil. So, but the copperheads are happy about that. But this sudden, and they're very reactive snakes. And so this spells for an issue. But I think when you go to these conferences, when you meet with these people, when we connect all these aspects of snake bite and venomous, there's no arguing the fact that this is a huge issue. Why are people purposely putting themselves at risk? Anti-venom supplies, difficult, limited, expensive, not impossible to own on your own or through an organization. The laws either don't exist or very radically state by state. I mean, our state by state system has worked in some ways and is horribly a failure in other ways like this. But I mean, when we say it's a privilege, people get upset. This week we lifted a few scales referring to that word. And I actually had people going on there going, I was totally for you on all of this until you mentioned privilege. Ah! I go, hold on. Stop. Let's stop a second. Let's not get triggered by the word privilege. What does it mean? I like to think of it as a race. And let's say that we are all starting a race and there's 4 of us, okay? And we are all going to race 20 feet from here to the end. However, I grew up with 2 parents in a house that did not suffer from poverty. And I never had to have food denied on the table. I had a great education. I had a safe upbringing. So you know what? I'm going to run this race with both my legs, okay? Now, the person next to me grew up in poverty-stricken situation and had to fight and every tooth and nail. Every day they went to school, they risked facing, their life being threatened. They couldn't focus because the teacher couldn't control the class because people were violent and dangerous. Gun and confiscations and, metal detectors filled their life. They couldn't focus on that. They had to work so much harder. That's why they get more points towards a college application. But in this case, running this race, they are starting off with 1 foot tied. The person next to them is now a minority who also comes from poverty. So we're going to tie 1 leg and 1 arm and throw them off balance. And then the 4th person, well, we're going to put them in a wheelchair because they have gone through handicap and they were born like that. So you get what I'm saying? Now make them race. Who gets to the end? Now, the other 3 could have been men who are athletes that were twice as strong as me, right? It's still an unfair advantage, right? To let someone just literally hop around on 1 foot. That's the best way to claim privilege, is that we all start at a different starting line based on what we're given to start. And for most of us in developed worlds, the access to things like clean water, medical, and safety is not as much of an issue to anyone comparable in a developed world. And I think the best example of how this is so unfair is when they cross over. The free handler Chandler, who arguably was one of the worst, there's videos of him drunk on his back in his venom room, holding snakes that are venomous over his head while his friends beg for his life. These are on the internet. Please don't watch them. Description is enough. If you watch, if you click, if you share, you help them. Please do not take a screenshot. That's how we advocate. People have to realize that we can drive the attention. But Chandler is famous for going overseas. I forget what the particular region was, but the story that is true is that he was bit by a cobra and he decided to take the anti-venom for the entire rural village he was at, who could not afford to replace it. And you better believe he didn't help do that. So now you have a rural village. These people who are the ones facing the 100,000 deaths a year, they're in that statistic for snake bite, when they're just trying to live and work in poverty, often in extreme hard working conditions of agriculture in remote areas where you're stepping around these snakes, just like the Copperhead story, but they're not walking to their car. They are out in, agricultural wetlands, basically. Think of like rice paddies. And, now they don't have anti-venom to save their whole village. This is a culture. This is a society. So free handlers are exploiting wildlife. They are exploiting people. They're exploiting resources. And not to mention, they're putting this on the internet. And they are influencing the future of herpetology. They have an entire following of both herp people and non-herp people going, wow, you got big balls. You're so tough. You're so cool. You know your animals so well. This is beautiful. It's none of that. You got an animal with minimal critical thinking that you're basically just manipulating to be calm in a situation. It is always Russian roulette. 5 chambers empty, if not 4 chambers empty, honestly. It is not comparable to riding a motorcycle without a helmet. I mean, you're not just avoiding safety precautions, you're doing it in the most dangerous way possible. So I don't know what riding a motorcycle backwards without a helmet with it's just, there's a correct way to do it, and there's correct technique, and there's correct tools, and they're saying, nah, I don't want to do any of that because this looks really cool, and blah, blah, blah. And they'll say they're Dingo, they'll say they're Steve Irwin. I mean, at the end of the day, all free handling is bad. And times have changed. The Irwin family has radically changed their motives and their safety practices. They don't do any of that crap anymore. And I truly believe modern Steve Irwin wouldn't. And the thing that stands out by Steve Irwin versus the other free handlers to me is really the fact that he was conservation focused. He unfortunately used free handling as a way to draw attention because nobody was listening. But when you listen to him, it was always conservation focused. And then put your money where your mouth is. Hundreds of thousands of acres of wild outback preserved, millions towards conservation. He not only has conservation programs in Australia, but programs like with elephants over in multiple parts of the world. Arguably very few people, if anyone, in herpetology has ever committed or contributed more to conservation than the Irwin family. And I don't know how anybody can deny that. That's just data on paper, whether you like what he did or not. But the idea is that was not the same time period, okay? You didn't have mass production of even snake hooks at that time, really. So, or the equipment. But the times have changed, and when we look at someone like, for example, like Dingo, you could have done conservation, all that, but he was actively free handling. He might have said, don't do this, but then showed it. You're modeling behavior. People don't listen, they watch. That's how teachers know how to do things. I read a book to kids and I go, I purposely make a mistake. And then I go, hold on, let me go back to the beginning of that sentence, because kids do not learn how to do that unless you model it. So the fact that they're like, don't do what I'm doing, nobody cares. That is, to do it at all is irresponsible, and people are not listening. They're modeling. And Dingo knew he got bit. He got envenomated. He knew he was allergic to a lapid venom, and he continued to hold a lapids, including with the bite-proof gloves, and he is no longer with us today. Any professional I've ever known tests for allergy and ceases working with the species when they have it. My own PI, Dr. Bill Hayes, actually drops venom on your arm, and we wait for reaction and test for it before you are allowed to get approved to work with rattlesnakes and species in our lab, because it is deadly. The anti-venom could actually kill you when you're trying to use it to save you. So I have a hard time seeing how anybody, for any reason, even if they're deceased, should avoid accountability. And I believe if people get upset saying, oh, Dingo Steve, I mean, first of all, there is literally a portrait of Steve Irwin in my living room above my head, okay? So I'm clearly not trashing Steve Irwin, but I believe that accountability applies to all equally. And I believe that people who have gone through what Steve and, because whether he died of a freak accident or not, Steve could have died the same way. But the idea is that they can teach just as much in death as they can in life. And we're not disrespecting them, as a person or their contributions. This is not a discussion of character. It's that this is wrong, and moving forward, we need to not have this in herpetology. Because it is just shock value. And whatever the reason is to draw that attention, we now know it causes us more harm than good. And we have, and going back to the start of the group, the reason I started this group was this fight, was this incident, and the knowledge that Tiger King 3 from the same producers, featuring the reptile industry and people I have other things to say about, but don't have time, like Jay of the Prehistoric Reptile in California, and Tom Crutchfield. These people, gave so much information. They were happy to be the front childs of this third thing, despite we know how Tiger King and Chimp Crazy went the first 2 editions with massive wildlife law changes. For good. I do believe those were very good changes for tigers and chimps, but I am horribly terrified that the law changes this next documentary will harm all of us. And so I believed it was very important to get loudly, and I know a lot of people think annoyingly, up front and be like, hey, we stand loudly against this. Because hopefully when this comes out, when all the backlash comes out, we will represent the not thems, the not Tiger Kings. And there will be a clear line in the sand. And I think free handling is a really good line to draw. Where we can grab that stick.
I think, to something you said much earlier, when I hear it in the UK, I know a few people that keep venomous in the UK. They're licensed because need a license in the UK, and they will say the same thing: keeping them is boring. If it's not boring, you're not doing it right. I think every single one of them says that, and it's like one of the reasons that I've never looked into myself, because it's like I can't interact with them. So why am I going to keep them? They're boring, sort of thing. They're not boring, but the actual keeping of it, and they all have in like a raw python or ball python or corn snake or something that they can handle that safely and stuff to get that sort of interaction, because they're like going into the Viv, they're all like, well, we're not handling them, they're hooking, using grabs, getting them straight out, put them in a safe bin or whatever, doing all the maintenance that needs to be done, and then putting them back. Okay, well, we're done now. Sort of thing, saving up jobs, so it's multiple jobs at once. But there is at least one person within the UK that's doing some of the, and he's got a shop and stuff, and
I bet it helps advertise his shop and raise his sales, and I guarantee he makes social media money on those videos. Yep.
And he's sort of copying that sort of style, and there's a few. I know I'm not going to necessarily say a name, but he's well known in the UK community, in that they know that at some point he's going to move on to something else, because he always does, and he's done this lots. But it's all like, please don't do this, advertise this sort of stuff, because all the other ones that deal with venomous in shops are all, again, advertising, look, if you're keeping these, it's going to be boring, and it should be boring.
I absolutely believe it. That's one of the reasons I don't keep any aquatics, because it's a hell of a lot of work and I see it as boring. But I mean, it's cool. But I'll leave that to some of my good friends like Mike Clarkson, who specialize in like tentacled snakes and elephant trunk snakes and all that fun stuff. I mean, like there's so many really cool levels of advanced herpetology, and it's like whatever you do, just do it right. Like it always reminds me of that. There's like this funny reel that just keeps popping up where probably because I talk about this all the time. But there's this one. It's like my husband says there's no wrong way to fill the dishwasher, because you're telling him he's doing it wrong, and then the wife goes out and mows the lawn all crazy and like half done, and like, oh really? There's no wrong way to mow the lawn either. So like it's the same concept. It's like, do what you're doing correctly. You do affect us all. And some people, just someone today was commenting on a Dingo post and saying about accountability and saying, oh, he's in South Africa. Why are you even? He has nothing to do with you. Why are you even talking about him? And it's like, he can't affect your laws. And it's like, he is on social media. People watch him. Americans go, I want to be Steve, I want to be Dingo. They're free handling here because they saw it there. It does not matter. It is a global herpetology issue. And I'm tired of the excuses. I should have written down a list. I actually did a post on Safety is Sexy in the last couple of weeks, and we asked everybody to tell us what are the excuses that people use to free handle. And it was quite amazing because everybody hit them all, like 30 of them. And it's everything from they did it to it's my right to I know the animals better. It's just all nonsense. And again, people go, oh, well, they have so much experience. And my comment to that is someone I train in the first hour to work with venomous would act in ways that would never be a replication of what, for example, Dingo would do, Steve would do, Tyler, Challenger, all these idiots. I'm saying idiots in the regards of like their choices, idiotic choices, and people who have character traits who follow that, like I mentioned with Chandler, who just don't get the ethics. I'm sorry, what they do. Not to mention, most of these people have long records of animal abuse, animal confiscation, drug trafficking, domestic violence. I mean, most of these people, I'm not referring to Dingo and Steve, but a lot of these more YouTube free handlers. Another one, Bennett, a lot of these guys. Yeah. And so it's really, really frustrating that animal neglect, animal abuse, animal stressing and harassment, we have to note that none of these things are considered by a lot of government agencies and people in charge as that, because they don't understand cold-blooded animals and they tend to think that they don't feel pain, they don't have stress. And because the laws and regulations often have not caught up with the understandings of the science, these people get away with these things because, like I said, if you were on TV putting YouTube videos up of harassing a cat and making it stress the heck out, you'd probably have people showing up to your house to kill you. I imagine you'd have millions of death threats in a second because, why is it okay for this and not this? And it's because the animal is misunderstood. So these free handlers and animal neglectors are just slipping through the system because of that misunderstanding. And it is idiotic choices of selfishness because they're always putting the animal after themselves, if at all. And I think it's time to say, hey, this is not what we want for our field, and it does affect us all. And there is no excuse to free handle. Not today, not now. I don't care what they did back then or even a month ago. If you've been doing this for 30 years, then you should know what I taught someone in the first hour. So experience is no excuse to say you do it better. Okay. You could do Russian roulette better than me. Okay. What does that mean? You knew how to spin the barrel to the exact, rotation better than I did. It's Russian roulette. And it just blows my mind. The level of, not only the exponential level in which free handlers are being generated in places like United States, Africa, South Africa, particularly, and Australia, but how this trend is just becoming justified by huge groups of people who don't free handle but support it and defend it, and refuse to have accountability seen. And I always joke that accountability is the scariest free handler. Okay, hold a rattlesnake, right? They'll hold a rattlesnake, but they don't want to face accountability. And that speaks loudly to what's going on here. It comes down to a lot with like issues with mental health, insecurity, and the need to get whatever attention or money they're trying to get from doing things as incorrectly as possible. So I guess one of my quotes I like to use is that the novice is impressed by free handling, while the expert is impressed by in situ, meaning an animal found for your audience, an animal found as is in its environment, photographed, or even in its cage in a beautiful habitat. Get the human out of the photo. Professionals don't want to see a human or your hands in the photo at all. Get the heck out of there. We want to see the animal, and it's just there's two completely conflicting sides of the industry. But I think it all boils down again to what we already talked about, which is ethics, intent. You just look at that, follow the money, and you'll know whose side they're on. And again, we need that hard line in the sand nowadays because we're just tired of this. Tired of it.
Yeah, and something. I mean, within the UK, within the zoo industry in the UK, we've got. I think it's bad to see children do this. That's hard. I want to say. Something that I've called Share Savvy, which is focusing on broader social media and animals with, animal content within social media of like, distinguishing between what, deeming as bad content versus good content and stuff, and what to share and what not to share. There's a big focus on otters, there's a big focus on primates, and there's other things, and of course, down the road things like reptiles and even invertebrates and stuff come under that. as well. Of like, if someone's there and you think, oh, that seems a bit dangerous or whatever, well, perhaps it is really dangerous. Don't share it, sort of thing. And stuff, and eventually, share the stuff that you go, oh, that's really good. And what's the context? Are they just being used for those clicks, for those views, and essentially, they make money out of the sensationalism of it.
That's the point. They're using the animal. They're not owning it, respecting it, admiring it, or educating about it. And they could be doing those other things, but they're all next to the fact that they are using the animal for their purpose. And I would argue people did the same thing to pit bull dogs and Rottweilers and German Shepherds. I would argue people have done the same the stallion horses, and the heavy equipment we try to justify when you lock an animal up and make it insane, and now you need heavy equipment to control it. There's so much misconception out there on animals that are dangerous. And I tell people they're not aggressive and dangerous. They are sensitive. They are scared. They are anxious. They are terrified. When you think about a rattlesnake rattling, that isn't, I'm about to get you. That's, hey, please don't step on me. For the love of God, please don't step on me. Because that evolved for millions and tens of millions of years, if not more, for big ungulates like cattle and buffalo to not step on these animals. It was, hey, I'm down here. Their venom is a pre-digestion aid. When they do these horrifically unethical surgeries where they make them venomoids, remove their venom glands, they need to eat mush. They need essential diets. They cannot digest their food properly. These animals use venom. It is their way to digest food. It is their main, purpose. It is not, and yes, it helps stun and slow the prey, but it's to digest it, and their body's based on that. So I think they're just horribly misunderstood, and we need to stop misunderstanding animals. We need to start using the science and the logic and the professionals to truly help us better understand animals and treat them correctly. And I think one of the things I've been obsessed with recently, I know it's very off topic, I won't go too into it, but is the British bridleless competition. Oh my gosh, has that stirred some pots and angered some people? The fact that you can do upper level show competition of dressage and jumping with just a neck rope, that has really been creating an incredible stir, like our free handler movement, and I've loved to follow it because and they're already doing their next competition this October. They're waiting to announce the location, but it's phenomenal. You do not need harsher methods, violence, and harsher equipment to control horses. You need to understand their behavior, understand their stress, their pain, and work with them, get to know them, bond with them, and use the bond to create the relationship that gets the work out of the horse. Not beat it, strap it, terrify it until it listens to you. Because anyone can make a horse do anything. Getting it to accept and exercise is a different matter. And that's what I was always taught going in natural horsemanship. But it's terrifying to see, and I'm sure you see this as a zookeeper, so many trends in which just animals are horribly misunderstood and therefore applied with an anthropomorphic human lens that causes them more pain, stress, issues, and everything, especially within captivity.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, as you see all the time when people go, oh, the animal's not smiling, it must be sad, or oh, that animal's smiling, it must be happy. And it's like sometimes it's the opposite, sort of thing, especially with primates. They're smiling, they're happy.
Oh, you don't want to see a chimp smiling at you.
We have that sort of cartoon, sort of Disney version of, they've got to look a certain way, and certainly the antis always use that. Certainly again, so it's always a classic image of an orangutan. It's like, oh, look, they're not smiling. It's like, that's just their face, they can't smile. So they don't have the ability to.
Do you remember the recent viral videos of the last couple of years about slow lorises and how they put their arms up and they do the armpit thing?
Yeah.
And and they were talking about that you have to stress them out beyond belief to get that behavior, and they were doing it on purpose for views and clicks. Unbelievable. That was terrifying. Absolutely terrifying to learn that information, and I'm glad there was so much awareness about it. But yeah, you take an animal's behavior and you try to relabel it, and it's devastating. It's really, we need to stop. Anthropomorphizing can be really good for conservation initiatives, but it can be horrific when it comes to analyzing animal behavior and applying, any kind of response to it.
Yeah, because there's so many things like, bearded dragons, one of their stress responses is freeze. Mm-hmm. And sort of thing, they just become still. And people go, oh, we're still on me, it must like it. And like, actually, they're just kind of giving up. Sort of just going, I'm done. Sort of thing. And they're like, oh, look, they're cuddling into it. Like, no, it's actually just.
What about this one? It's waving to me. It's waving to me. It likes me. Oh, look at it wave at me.
Yep. All those sort of things, and they completely misunderstood what the behavior is. And that happens a lot. So I think again, this also leads into, well, obviously the final sort of for tonight. We'll have to have it on again, definitely, but is around, the fact that all these things can lead into law change. We've got a campaign up in Scotland at the moment. Dan Clare Chris, if he's still in chat, he's Scottish, he's up in Scotland. There's a whole this Don't Pick Me campaign going on by the SSPCA and Born Free and One Kind, which basically wanted to bring in a positive list of what is allowed to be permitted be kept within Scotland, which would see most species banned, essentially. And one of the things they're doing is they decided to attack, essentially, people with neurodivergence. And on this report, basically say that, a lot of keepers that keep these animals are neurodivergent, which means they're not well equipped to look after these animals mentally, and so, or they're from low socioeconomic backgrounds, so they don't have the money to look after these animals. And of course, you identify as someone who is neurodivergent yourself. As I've said, recently been asked about this sort of thing by actually, well, friends of mine responsible for reptile keeping. So, funny enough, emailed me this evening about isopods, so I need to check that one out. So, as a whole, but I would certainly argue that people that are neurodivergent, whether it be autism or ADHD or whatever, are some of the best animal keepers out there because of how focused they become on the details.
Unquestionably, we are obsessed. Like, I can't even hear having dogs and reptiles, even like any noise in the house. I wake up from a dead sleep. I've always been like that as a kid. I only heard about this in the last week, and I was appalled. Particularly because I really thought this was an older report. I did not realize this had just come out, and it is unbelievably unfair, devastating, and offensive. For the audience, I'll give a little breakdown. We consider neurodivergent individuals or neurodivergence to be within what we call the spectrum of ADHD and autism. There's a lot of misunderstanding. We used to call this a high to low functioning. It's really not the best. If you Google autism ADHD spectrum bubbles, that is the most common one that's now used by modern research, which basically shows a breakdown of different kind of like overlapping Venn diagrams of bubble systems that are basically divided by symptom. In general, neurodivergence just means that we are not neurotypical. Our brains work differently, but neurodivergent people have from the beginning of time arguably been some of the most common philosophers, scientists, leaders, historians. The people who were seen as quirky and weird or had ingenious ideas were just thinking differently. We are hardwired for emergencies. We come with a long evolutionary history that is very well demonstrated in science to be different through anthropology and human evolution, and that is that our brains, at least a lot of modern science believes and supports hypotheses that we are meant for emergencies. So, if you've ever worked with a neurodivergent person, we tend to be horrible with daily life, time management, and time blindness, and a lot, social interactions, and interrupting and talking over people, as unfortunately one of mine. And I tell people the best way to understand mine being someone who is AUHD, and I'll explain that in a second. But I was originally diagnosed as ADD because I was very bullied and quiet as a child. When my personality came out, I was relabeled as ADHD. Then they said we were only ADHD. And then only in the last decade have they discovered, have they started dual labeling us. Up to a decade ago, you were only labeled as either autistic or ADHD. You did not get both. And now we know with modern science of only the last couple of years, really, last 5 years, that there is very few people in the world who are only autistic or ADHD. We are all a blend. We are all in this spectrum of these overlapping bubbles based on symptomatic, exposure and what we sense. So sensory systems, like being too sensitive. I have really big issues with bright light and sound, and then just sensory, like having socks on. And as a kid, you're weird, you're quirky. No, I'm just autistic. And but women in particular experience ADHD and autism symptoms differently. Women's diagnosis for autism really didn't exist much except for the last 12 years, unless you were severely nonverbal. it's really complicated. It's something that's hard to understand, but what's important to understand is that the vast majority of neurodivergent people are a mix of autism and ADHD. I only in the last year, through a neurotherapist, was able to show that I am AUHD. So it's a combination of ADHD and autism. I'm very strong ADHD, and I have a very strong hyperactivity. So I tend to show as the ADHD type for common men. And so I was very early diagnosed as ADHD, but I had all of these sensory tisms. I couldn't have food touched on my plate. And it just like, there's so many little things that some of it I've shed and some I haven't. But I'm a very fidgety person, and all those things were tisms. So as a kid growing up in the 90s and 80s, you just learn to be uncomfortable. Sit still, don't move, don't do this. And my brain's going crazy because it moves 3 times faster up here than it does out of my mouth. And I think the best way to understand it is it's genetic. Okay, my family's neurodivergent. I'm neurodivergent. It is inheritable. It is not from your mom taking Tylenol and vaccines. There is a strong, heavily published peer-reviewed studies on it is genetic. Now, did a study come out this year linking Tylenol and autism? Was it done by Harvard? Yes. Harvard has a long history, Harvard University, of doing really biased studies, like the big dairy studies, like the big sugar shifting the blame to meat for heart disease studies. They love working corporations. This study came out just in the last year here in the United States and started a horrible anti-autism campaign. In my country, they are currently trying, and I know this is a little sidetrack, but I think people in the European audience need to realize how bad it is in the US right now. And I know you see in the media, but they are trying to make an autism registry list, which is similar that was done in the Holocaust, to register us and to basically violate our HIPAA rights for medical records. And they say it's to study us. As a Jew, I am Jewish, and that distinction paranoid lights go off real quick. We always say we're the canary in the coal mines of fascism, and then being neurodivergent and Jewish, I've got double that. It's terrifying and it's being misunderstood. And that Harvard study, what they did is they took all the correlational data and ran it, but removed the genetic component. So yeah, if you remove the known component of a correlation between two relationships, between a relationship, you can find all sorts of crazy stuff. So of course, one of the response studies came out from another university, and they were showing autism linked to circumcision as a mock of that study, being like, look, you can correlate anything you want when you lie and you hide the data. It is genetic. So knowing that it is genetic, you are born with it. First problem right away is that this study and the way it viewed neurodivergent people is oppressive, and it's illegal, and it's wrong. No different than saying someone who uses a wheelchair is less likely to have access, to take proper care of an animal because they don't have the full mobility. It's just as insulting. And the point you mentioned is even better, is that there's something really unique about neurodivergent people that make this entire claim laughable. And you've already made it a point, is that we suffer from a few things that are pretty awesome, that I consider superpowers. A justice complex, hyper focus, an obsession of hobbies, an obsession to detail, stress and anxiety to maintain all of that. And so across the board, neurodivergent people, from myself to others, are the best keepers. We have our certificates on the wall, our licenses framed. We have the most ridiculously neat, meticulous. My house does not smell. You wouldn't even know I have animals until you walk into the far room and you're like, what are these cages? It's an obsessive hobby. It's the love of the animal and giving them the best need and just striving for that perfection. And I do not know a single neurodivergent person in my life. I don't care if they are a 10-year-old keeper. I've met 4-year-old keepers like myself back in the day, or a 70-year-old keeper. It does not matter. Neurodivergent people tend to be the best keepers. The report also mentioned poverty, and that's a little tough because you do see reptiles in poverty and in situations like confiscations and things like that. But I believe poverty is more tied to relationships of crime, desperation, things like that. So, for example, a lot of people in poverty, might not even be able. I've met people in Florida, being a teacher, who are children who are homeless and their parents have a brand new Cadillac car and they live in a brand new Cadillac car, but have no home and can't afford food. So poverty, is tied to obesity. It creates, so we're going to say everyone who's heavy now suddenly is a dangerous reptile keeper, right? Like there's so many relationship ties that have more to do with poverty and the societal impact. So I think that was a very unfair connection, because reptile keeping is an expensive hobby, and the vast majority of us are not, if you get into a tight stance, I know most reptile keepers would rather feed their animals before they feed themselves. And so I would disagree with the link to the poverty. It's a societal thing, not a keeper thing. And the neurodivergent thing, it just infuriates me. And to make it an even bigger point, a wonderful, I believe, wonderful neurodivergent who I know considers herself more loudly autistic than myself, and I love it. She's more on the autism spectrum, but she is one of the most brilliant veterinarians of reptiles in the world, and that's Dr. Heather Bajornabo. And she recently opened the Tree of Life, exotic veterinary practice here in the Valley of Arizona. And she is the only board-certified reptile vet in the state, one of the only ones in the country. She is one of the most certified papered reptile and exotic vets, specifically for that, in the world and in the nation. And she is very proud and open about her neurodivergence, like myself. She is just a phenomenal vet. And I think that screams loudly. This was brought up to me recently. I recently collaborated with research through Responsible Reptile Keeping, because they're doing it as well, with a study with the United Nations for an upcoming wildlife trafficking report. And the goal of this mini study, which becomes a part of a huge wildlife trafficking report, like similar to the IPCC Global Climate Change Report, right? That is this collaborative UN study of UN studies to kind of create some claims, is they have asked me about this report. And they've asked me about my response to it. And so in turn, I went and interviewed, a few other friends. And then it came back. Like, I almost say the more limited someone might be in the autistic spectrum, and meaning and I use the term limited as not following the neurotypical way of adapting to society, the more they tend to be farther from that, the more radically good of a keeper they tend to be. And I really see the opposite trend of what that document is claiming. And they're not using science to claim it. They're using propaganda. So yes, neurodivergent people probably do make up a huge part of the reptile industry, but that is a good thing. And them, including myself and Dr. Heather, are on the opposite side of that line, calling for best practices and the safety. So it's unbelievable that that is happening in today's day and age. But looking up, you sent me the report and I looked at it and looking at it further, the negative context they were drawing has already gained massive pushback from the neurodivergent community. We're tired of being labeled as, the brain worm infested politician who does this crap in the United States, RFK Jr. I don't have time to say how much this man is just a monster. I think he's a puppet monster because his brain isn't all there, from lead poisoning, heroin addiction. I can't make this up. Swimming in fecal water. Just Google RFK Jr. if you haven't caught up on horrible U.S. politics. He's just, he's a front puppet for anything anti-health and science. This man is out there loudly going out there and saying autistic people are weights on their family. They are drains on society. They are a problem. Now, have I met plenty of what can be called violent nonverbals who require full-time care? Yes, there's forms of autism that the people are so limited in their ability to be sociable, and their symptoms override their ability to interact. And they become so frustrated, they can become violent. And does this put strain on families and communities and individuals? Yes, of course. I'm not trying in any way to be like, hey, I'm autistic, everybody's like me. It's a huge spectrum, diversity. But to label these people as anything less than human, as contributors to society, is wrong. And they're grouping us all together and making us it's identical to what they're doing to trans people. It's identical to what they're doing to other minorities, particularly in the United States with immigrants right now. And we are bullying and ostracizing the minorities. And that's why we're neurodivergent. We're not neurotypical, right? So the idea is we're being ostracized and blamed, and neurodivergent people, trans people, people of color, minorities, all these were people who ended up in Hitler's camps. And that's always my first comment. I don't care what people feel about these issues. They're human rights, and Hitler had a problem with them. You probably shouldn't, right? And it's a scary day and age, but it's just another thing to discriminate against. And so I hope to see a lot more loud pushback from the neurodivergent community and others who support it, to say, hey, this is not this is terrible. This is absolutely terrible. And it literally shook me to my core to learn this. I'm not even kidding. And then when you mentioned today, we were prepping that it was a new article, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. I thought this thing was 20 years old. It's horrifying. So I think it's just more about coming together, sharing resources. Knowledge is power. And just like animal behavior is misunderstood, neurodivergent people, handy-capable people are misunderstood, whether it's a physical or mental disability or a neurodivergence, which we do not consider a disability, but a difference. It can be really complicated. So I would say it hurts, but I believe in a future where we will prove them by putting our money where our mouth is and showing our quality practices. I have no doubt about that. And I think the response has already loudly said that. But yeah, I would say it really hurt. It really hurt because it was something that I never had thought of, honestly, and I didn't expect. But I think people are willing to do anything to push their means. And it sounds like they are using more radical PETA propaganda, emotional crap than they are using science to try to push these reptile bans. And we won't stand for that because we are not Tiger King.
Yeah, no, it was, when it came out, it shocked everyone.
What was the date, by the way? How recent is it? Because I didn't get to read the whole thing yet.
It was earlier this year, I believe.
Okay, earlier this year.
As of that came out, and I think it didn't necessarily shock people that the likes of Born Free and One Kind Point, because they're very much anti-animal being in captivity and anti-pet and everything. They're going to use whatever tactics they will. What people really decided was that it was the SSPCA put their name to it as well and co-signed this report alongside them, and it's like, you're not meant to be this sort of thing. You're meant to be a charity that's just animal welfare, not animal rights.
And I got another question. Without looking it up, how does the SSPCA feel about pit bull breeds? I already know, I bet. Probably no, right? Very breed biased. Breed ban biased.
I mean, when it comes to, I'm not so clear on the other side of things, but I know in the UK we had the ban on XL bullies, which isn't even a breed, but
it's a big muscle dog. You know what? When I looked into doing my study at Cambridge and had looked into what immigration would be like, they measure 113 points on a dog's body, ignore all paperwork or veterinary claims of breed, and just measure their body and go pit bull or not. And I had never seen such a scientifically ignorant way to enforce a breed ban. Where I'm from in Michigan, we overturned the breed ban. I was part of that fight like 8 to 10 years ago. And they actually made a law to prevent all future breed bans, saying they were not based on any actual science of animal behavior. It was supported by tons of veterinarians. And basically each city or township could make rules about walking dogs on a leash or making them wear a muzzle, but based on weight, not breed, or they had to apply it across all breeds, or based on a weight category and things like that. And it's interesting, but it's the United States has radically moved towards those. And it surprises me that I feel like the UK has lagged on that a lot. But again, it's the bad owners, the people who use their dogs, use their animals. Look how tough I am. That's not a family member. Pit bulls are half bulldog, half terrier. It's a very muscular, hyper animal that is just a cuddle bunny. I mean, I've rehabilitated them. I have to. I love them to death. And my first pit bull, actually, my little girl, she just passed a couple months ago at 10 and a half. She was our sweet girl from a cancer that was suddenly hemorrhaged and was not known. She went to the vet, I kid you not, on a Friday and passed on a Wednesday. But it was horrible. But she volunteered most of her life at children's hospitals. She was a pit bull ambassador. And that dog, I literally seen her attacked by a neighbor dog that ran out from a yard while we were biking once, and she rolled over and said, I'll give up. She didn't even fight back. So and she looked like a absolute stereotypical XL bully, American Bulldog mix. So just, again, it goes back to like a lack of understanding of animal behavior. And the fact that we have the technology, we have the peer reviews, we have the science. They're just not using it. And the politicians just don't care. It's the motives of like, why would I make this ban? Why would I focus on this? And it's never to help us. It's, or any pet owner, it's just say, this is a problem. But when they ban them, then they fuel the puppy mills. Then they fuel the dog fighting. Then they fuel the black market trade of reptiles. So the laws and restrictions politicians and governments are creating only make the problem worse by making it so the illegal people have possession rather than the other ones, which is why I'm so excited to be a consultant on the, with responsible reptile keeping on this United Nations mini study of the big picture, which is really focusing on lizard trade in Germany and United States, by the way. With her, at least the data she's pulling. But it's phenomenal. I think this is what we need to do. I'm excited to hear a future where the United Nations and government agencies are actually asking hobbyists, keepers, breeders, and scientists, what do you think? How can we reduce black market, improve pauper trade? Can reptiles be a societal aspect to helping people, their mental health, their life? And I would say yes. I'd like to give a quote to end the neurodivergent topic, at least from my point. I'd love it if you want to say more. But I think a good ending point is my friend Michaela Brenna, who I love, Michaela. And she's one of the people I interviewed about being neurodivergent, particularly leading towards autism, like myself, and on the spectrum and reptile keeping. And her first response was, they are a lifeline to my mental health. And this is someone who keeps over 100 plants. I don't know how many plants she has. She taught me everything I know about plants. I keep about 60. I can see. You can see some of my plants and whatnot. So, in general, we keep a lot of plants. We keep a lot of animals, and they're all happy and healthy. She has a reptile collection and all her plants, and she is one of the most meticulous keepers I've ever met. She's taught me so much. I mean, I couldn't keep plants alive until I met her, honestly. My friend Chelsea, who I mentioned earlier, another plant person, the rattlesnake girl. And, and it's really, really interesting because they are lifelines to our mental health. For me, the part of being neurodivergent as a kid is being lonely. That's the one word I would use. I was lonely and I was misunderstood constantly. You're rude, you're obnoxious, you're annoying, you're this, and you're just trying to feel heard. I'm just trying to be comfortable. I'm just trying to fidget. When we fidget, this is called stimming. And if you saw my feet, they're doing this the entire time here. I look like I'm sitting still because my feet are dancing a whole opera right now. Tap dancing. And that's because I've got so much more energy in my body and I can't help that. That's just how I am. That's part of it. And it's why I talk fast. It's why I'm hyperactive. And it's why my parents recommended to use this energy to drive change in the world, because it's a gift to have it. But I think it's just that misunderstanding. So to me, it was a lot of being misunderstood and being lonely. And so animals understood me. Animals listened to me. Animals helped regulate me. Because one of the things to understand about neurodivergence, I guess, is a talking point that I had mentioned, is that we are not identified necessarily just by symptom or inattention. The number one thing that defines a neurodivergent is emotional dysregulation. So it's like I can only compare it to being somewhat like a teenager with the roller coaster feelings, but all the time in your whole life, you feel things very deeply, which is why we have justice complex, which is why we have severe anxiety and things. They also say today, you still, historically and today, cannot study neurodivergence without trauma, because there's no such thing as a neurodivergent who hasn't experienced trauma. And it's the trauma of loneliness and being misunderstood. And for me, feeling reptiles, bonding with animals, they were cold, they were smooth, it was sensory. The movement I do is stimming. When I'm holding them, working with a horse or a snake, my stimming calms, which is meant to regulate my brain by movement. But now the hyper focus on what I'm doing takes that out of my brain. So I don't have to move and fidget and bite my hands and do these destructive stimming habits. Stimming's good, but it can be destructive too, like hair pulling and finger biting. And I've always been a finger biter. So, and I'm talking till your hands are bloody and you have to hide them and be embarrassed by them. It's horrific. It's because the activity we're doing is actually creating a feedback loop to our brain that makes us feel good. And it makes bad feelings or discomfort in our own body stop. And it's very hard to understand that. This is why a lot of people who are in some other spectrums of autism have to wear headphones all the time. I carry earplugs and I carry fidget toys and I have to wear big special sunglasses. It changes as I get older. I never had light sensitivity until a few years ago. And now it's like just horrible. I can't go out even in decent light without sunglasses. So I think as a lifeline to mental health, there are friends, there are confidence. They are there when everybody else turns against us and misunderstands us. Our animals don't. So I think there's a very, very strong tie, not only to neurodivergence being better keepers, but that these animals make us mentally healthier as people. It is an outlet that is so essential. So I think one of the biggest arguments for reptile keeping, it is a sociological aspect. It is good for neurodivergence. And I also advocate other things like volunteering at animal rescues, equine therapy. I mean, many nonverbal autistics in scientific literature, the first time they ever spoke and broke the barrier to verbal was by swimming with a dolphin or riding a horse. There is no denying the strong connection that neurodivergence has to the animal kingdom. And the ability to care for an animal and to have that, we like control. So to care for it, control it, and it gives us a sense of place in this world and more control over our symptoms, which we often don't have control of. So I know this is like a whole sociological aspect of neurodivergence, guys. Sorry, but This is honestly the first time I've ever been able to talk about this with an audience. So I was very excited. Thank you, Phil. And I know it's a lot, but I think the more we are understood, just like the reptiles, the more this issue will be understood. And it is huge. I don't know where I would be without my reptiles, and I can't live without them. I truly can't. They are core to my mental health. They are our lifeline. So, yeah.
And it's something that, pretty much almost every reptile keeper, says, on, and the same with invertebrate keepers, I've got a huge amount of inverts, and I'd be lost without them. Kind of thing, we haven't have inverts to our reptiles, but and everything, and it gives people that routine, it gives people something to work towards, and we also, we have this thing actually teach the kids how to appreciate reptiles or fish or invertebrates. They're not going to go off and become the drunks or the drug addicts necessarily. They're going to focus on this. That's what I certainly did as a. I started fairly young when I was 7, and people, my parents, friends were like, "Oh, you're silly letting them get these reptiles, get these invertebrates. What are you doing?" And then when I was older and getting my own money, I was like, "No, I need to save my money to buy this light bulb or to buy this thermostat or whatever, rather than going out and getting bladdered every weekend or spending on other things or whatever. No, my money's going on the animals instead."
Yeah, I actually went to college with a big 8-foot snake and my common reptile boa and chinchillas and a tarantula, a few other things. And I remember I was the only person getting snockered at a party and then rushing home rushing home next morning, all that, while everybody else is just sleeping away the day because I have animals. Yeah. And it was always a sense of greater responsibility. I never turned away from it. And yes, it's sad to lose them. Yes, they're a lot of work, but to me, the rewards were always far outweighing. And I bet I was going to ask you, what's when you have a bad day, who do you go home and play with? Because I always say when I have a bad day, there's always an invert or a reptile that comes out because that's my bad day friend. And I love my Texas wild-caught vinegaroon that I personally procured from the Trans-Pecos Desert. He looks like freaking Darth Vader. He's like, and just the little tappy tap of their little feelers. I mean, I just taking them out and letting them walk in my hands. It takes the stress away. And I bet you have one too.
I think most of mine I don't actually handle so much, but I'd be
you're not handling it. Are you no handling for safety, or is it venomous handling?
I'm not no handling. I do some handling, but often I don't purely because of the amount I've got. So it's no, I just need to feed and water and do the basics. If I do handle it, something like a millipede or something like that, and I'll sit there and be like, oh yeah, this is nice. But often if I'm stressed or something, I'd actually rather just come up here and start just feeding stuff. Feeding them,
cleaning cages. Oh my gosh, so therapeutic. Yeah.
Or right, I'm going to set up this brand new enclosure, sort of thing, and let's build a terrarium for this, and that's sort of my sort of thing. And I just enjoy, interacting with them in terms of just observing them and stuff as well. Yes. And, bit of occasional handling with some things, but often I just don't have the time to do the handling.
Yeah, but designing the diet, the cage, there's so many creative, artistic, just really interesting aspects to our hobby, whether you're from inverts to verts, that just make exotic keeping so much fun because it's a learning journey. It's a learning journey before you get them, to set up the habitat, to play with enrichment and switch it up and understand them as they seasonally change, like tegus, from being not waking up except for a little what's going on today? I'm awake. Once every 2 weeks, and they're a sleepy lug. Versus this time of year where it's get me out of the cage, and then they're walking around my house, Calaco dragging and just biting dog toys and shaking blankets. And it's night and day with the animal. It's quite funny, and I love seeing them go through that change. Even though I'll be honest, pushing July, I'm a little bit go to bed already. But they're really fun to see them grow and change, and especially working with monitors and tegus. I like teaching them things. They can be clicker trained. Even a nose can be clicker trained. They can learn. They've got individual personalities, especially inverts. People do not give enough attention and love to inverts. They are individuals. They are fascinating. I actually had a scorpion. She just passed last year, but I had one of our native desert hairy scorpions. I bought her from an expo. She was a wild caught adult female desert hairy, and she made a big chunk of girl, right? And this animal was so used to being used in education, not like more as a demo. And I know I'm not like, and again, everybody's like, you're venomous free handling. I know that I'm not allergic to them. I know that it would be a painful sting, but that I'd be okay. Because I know that I don't let other people hold her when I had her, but I got her so used to being picked up, and she had never tried to strike once in the 3-4 years I had her. I would put my hand in the container. She would actually run into my hand and sit and then do this like it was a hot tub. And then she'd be like, okay, I'm good. And you could even move her tail up and down, and I would show people her, and it was just, to demo it and basically demo like she's not a monster. Don't do what I'm doing because I know the animal. I work with her. And I also know the risk, right? Because now it's starting to sound like what the venomous free handlers say. But the difference is this animal is not deadly. It's not going to require anti-venom. I'm not going to have anaphylaxis reaction. And I'm not making videos of it. I'm not putting it over the internet. And really, it's just at an ed program, be like, look, she's not a monster. This is her name's Cinnamon Roll. This is Cinnamon Roll. Isn't she cute? And, and then they see me try to go put her back in the container, and she grabs onto my hand. She's like, no, I don't want to go. And of course, we talk about the anthropomorphizing. Why is she on my hand? Why is she calm? But I think that's an interesting discussion to have with but I know my issue with inverts is that they are highly under-respected. They're seen as disposable. People hold not just ones like I'm talking about, but Deathstalker scorpions, which are equal to Cape Cobras and very venomous, should not be doing that. Not to mention one of the most unimpressive looking little scorpions I've ever seen. Just like you're just keeping it because you think it's cool that it's so deadly. I think that there's a different aspect there, and there is a way to do things, but I would never, free handle an animal or not use safe equipment with an animal that had a major, issue to myself. If I had, allergy, for example, or severe reaction of any kind to venomous stings, and I have been stung a million times in my life by different inverts accidentally in nature, I would not be doing that, And that's also why I do not videotape it, advocate it, put it online. It's more just to show the public that she's not a monster, and that she's misunderstood, and that it gives them an opportunity to look at her behavior. Like, why does it go in my hand? Why does it hold on? Why does it not want to leave? Why is it not stinging me? And of course, why should you not do the same? And that's a good discussion. And I think a lot of people really get that. But at the same time, I would not put that on the internet because of my inability to control the audience in which is seeing it, versus like a small hands-on education program where this thing you can't touch, but you can see really up close. And I don't know. I think that's interesting. But I have had criticism for that. I would love to know your take on that as an invert keeper. Education regarding holding, because I've had many people, like even kids, you hand them an invert that's harmless, they drop it, they kill it. I've seen that in too many ed programs. So I'd love your insight on that.
It's always basically, handling is something, within the invert community in the UK, especially within tarantula circles.
Oh, yeah.
You'll get people adamantly on either side. Some that are like, oh no, you have to handle, and then but often a lot that are like, no, we never handle crashes for whatever reason. I'm in the middle. I like to be in the middle for most things. I like to be
Me too. I agree.
So in terms of, yes, I'm not necessarily going to be making videos of me. I don't handle my tarantulas myself. Most of mine aren't used to it. My partner, she handles her tarantulas. They're used to it. You know what I mean? And then together we'll do educational displays where some of her ones come out to be handled. My parents do the same. They've got some that are handleable as well. And so, but don't necessarily put that, like I say, online in terms of, and it's like, we know the animal itself, the individual, we know obviously the signs, that its behavior that it's going to give if it doesn't want to be handled or it's not up to it. And so, but by and large, a lot of time, certainly online in the UK, if you see someone, handling a tarantula, it's normally, what are you doing? They don't get anything from being handled. Why are you handling? So don't handle it. We don't do handling. We treat them like fish, sort of thing, or be observed, and that's it, sort of thing. And for the most part, that's perhaps why, it should be, apart from, like I say, ones that are doing it for educational purposes. But you also get, unfortunately, we've had not so much nowadays, but certainly in the past, some people that content creators that would be on one platform saying, oh no, you don't handle this, da, 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 and then we'll be on another platform handling the ones that you definitely don't want to handle, like the old.
So they're trying to gather the attention and clicks from both sides and not get caught playing a flip-flopper.
That's it. I was being like, oh no, you don't want to be handling postal areas. I wouldn't advocate handling postal areas. So they're quick, or they can be quick. Mine's fairly calm, but I wouldn't handle them myself. And this year we've had people UK based on this platform being like, look, you don't want to handle these, and then going on to a short form platform and handling those exact species purely to get the guy under the views and the clicks and stuff. And you're like, no, they're just being a hypocrite.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you're going to handle, at least go, these are the species that we handle because of X, Y, Z reasons. And so,
and there isn't a consistency. Yeah.
And so, but there's always that, obviously, the risk of the hairs. But as my partner, she doesn't get affected by contained hairs at all.
Really?
Even with Faraphosa, that doesn't affect her.
Wow. To me, it's like touching one of those cactus with a very, very fine spikes. Like, it doesn't look like it has the spines, and a lot of people go, "Oh, this cactus don't have spines," and they'll touch it and go, "Oh!" And it's like, your hand turns into like a Brillo pad, like a. Yeah,
I don't know if she's tested with those cacti, but certainly, she's been.
That's what reminds me of. That's how it feels to me, at least when I've gotten tarantula hairs and things. Yeah.
She's been haired by a few tarantulas and doesn't itch, doesn't have any rash, doesn't have nothing, no reactions at all.
That's impressive.
And she keeps testing it out with various ones because also they can become sensitive to it.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. If she wants to I don't know whether she will do, but that even Faraphosa, we're talking about the worst of the hairs, the most irritating of the hairs. Like my Faraphosa, if they come itching for the rest of the day, so I get affected by the hairs definitely. So I can feel it, and she's like, "Oh, no, it's fine."
And then she comes up and gives you a big hug and just puts them in your face.
And then again, I don't really sort of handle scorpions myself. That's purely because although I don't keep any dangerous ones within work, I've had to experience a little bit of work with dangerous ones. More just out of respect for them, I don't want to be accidentally put my hand in with a dangerous one, kind of thing. So I just treat them all the same. It's very rare I've had to deal with anything that's potentially dangerous. I mean, the last sort of case was one that came over accidentally in someone's luggage and was roaming around their bedroom, and they found it 2 weeks later.
Oof.
And then
I know some colleagues here put on a backpack. Well, we have a lot of native scorpions and tarantulas, but I know a colleague who put on a backpack and got 5 stings to the back. Not good.
This one, they brought it back from Cyprus, I think it was. But they didn't know they brought it back. They found it 2 weeks later roaming their bedroom. And of course, in your bedroom, barefoot. And then, they called up my work and, went over and picked up. And I was like, this could be a dangerous species. I was like, I don't know the species straight away, but this one could be.
Do you think it came in from agriculture? It got in their luggage just while they were in a tropical area or desert.
So we just got in the hotel or something and into their luggage.
Sorry?
Cyprus.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I misunderstood. Wow. No. Okay. I'm trying to think. Okay. Yeah. My geography's bad. I'm just okay. Yeah. That's not good. Yeah.
I was like, "Whoa, you're lucky." Sort of thing. This. Yeah, literally.
Not to mention, they might not have the correct antivenom, or treatment for the new locality. That's really scary. Wow.
I was like, when I sort of got as good idea as I could, I was like, okay, I mean, not going to be the most dangerous, but certainly in the family of the Buffordays, which are dangerous and stuff. But low down, but you definitely wouldn't want to be stung by one. Sort of thing, and is one that in the UK you would need a license to keep privately, sort of thing. So I was like, right. I was able to have it in the zoo for a little bit. sort of thing, and done a bit of an educational thing of like, check your luggage before you come
No, I like that. I think it's one of the things I love most about Shepherd was you guys have that beautiful exhibit of the poaching confiscations and a lot of the legal wildlife trade. And then your guys' education materials at your zoo are so fabulous. So everybody visit Cambridge, England, Shepherd Wildlife Park. And Shepherd, it's so fabulous. I mean, honestly, I was blown away. I can't wait to come back and visit you guys, Phil, because it was just wonderful. And it's cool to know that you're constantly incorporating so many aspects of the human-wildlife conflicts that can occur like that. That's very important. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's something that we focus on quite a lot. We've actually recently just opened a conservation hub as well at the park for they can engage kids more into conservation and teach them more and stuff. So big sort of interactive building to hopefully inspire the next
education center. Yeah, I remember the one that had the really good Wi-Fi because it was at the big two stories, like a really tall building, right?
This is another building. We've opened another building up with.
Really? This is new. Oh, okay. Yes, please tell me about it. I want to hear more.
Brand new. So it's the conservation hub. Mm-hmm. The pub, the charity got a grant for Rolling, maybe something to open up where it's got some interactive, like digital art play that teaches conservation.
Oh, I love that.
As well as like interactive. All sorts of interactive like screens and stuff in there of to try and get kids engaged with conservation messaging and stuff, and hopefully inspire the next generation into conserving the natural world and showing things that you can do quickly as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, discovery learning is huge. Really getting them to be a part of their, leading and navigating their own learning journey. And being able to do that through art, through humor, through adventure. I mean, that's just phenomenal. That's so great. And it's really cute to have it hands-on to apply different senses so then we can incorporate people that might be neurodivergent or everyone, neurodivergent or not, has different learning styles. So that's really important.
Yeah. And even like to learn conservation through play.
I love that. That phrase is just fabulous. I love that. Conservation through play. That's so much fun.
So... it's something only opened. It's been open nearly a month now. I think fairly new.
Oh, so I just missed it. It opened like right when I left, like because I was there end of March, early April.
It opened up at the end of May.
Oh wow! Well, now I was already planning to come back next year, but I definitely got to come back and see that. That sounds amazing. That is really cool. You should definitely. I wonder if you could do a podcast on just highlighting you and your other zookeepers, kind of put that together, your education team. That'd be interesting to hear how that was developed. I imagine a lot of other zoos would be interested in, or even smaller programs in replicating.
Yeah, I think they're probably going to present that because I wasn't involved in it myself.
Oh, okay, no worries. You're advertising it. It's great. You have many departments.
So that was done, through the conservation charity of the park as well as the education team and stuff. But no, it's a really cool little building. So to hopefully inspire the next generation.
That's beautiful. I love that. That's good to hear that you guys are doing so much like that. That's fabulous.
Yeah. So we're going to start. I don't know because it's 5 to 11.
I was gonna say I'm keeping you up all night. You have to actually be a zookeeper like in the morning here.
There's. I believe there's an 8-hour time difference between us.
Yes, we are at 2:56 p.m. Pacific time here in Arizona. So my day is just getting to a little bit past lunch, and I feel bad I'm keeping you up all night as well as your viewers. But thank you so much, Phil, for having me. It's been a pleasure to meet you from the conference to the zoo to this. I've been looking forward to this since we've been talking for a minute. And this is fabulous. I would love to, continue to collaborate with you. I think what you do is phenomenal. And I hope your audience really enjoyed our 2-hour conversation that kind of jumped around. But I think it really had a consistent theme, in general. And I hope people take away the big messages rather than like, oh, she picked on dingo. I really hope people see that we're here to advocate for best practices and coming together and protecting the hobby, the animals, the research that we love, and that we welcome anybody from any field or experience level to join us in drawing that line in the sand. We are not Tiger King, and we have to prepare for this documentary coming out and how it will affect the global reptile community. And I feel nervous, but also positive, because when I go to conferences like the Drayton Manor Conference, the BHS, AHH, and meet people like yourself and all the amazing people there, it gives me hope. It gives me hope that we can cross countries and culture and neurotypical neurodivergence, all these things can be pushed aside in order to really prioritize, what matters, and that's conservation ethics and safety and best practices. So I thank you for it. This was lovely fun. I really enjoyed this.
No, thank you for coming on. And also, we'll have to arrange another one at some point. So,
absolutely, but you need to actually sleep because we can't have I think it'd be unsafe to have a not properly slept lead zookeeper in charge of all that incredible massive collection you have of that. I mean, you guys utilize your property so well. There's so much there in such an incredibly well-structured situation. So you got a lot doing there. So I won't hold you too long, but let's do this again. Let's find some more topics and do this again. This was so much fun, and I just wish you the best of luck in all you do, because this is some fabulous education both on the ground and online, and you've given me some new ideas to take with me.
That's brilliant. And where can people find you sort of online if they want to see some of the stuff that you're doing?
Oh, I'm sorry. I missed that last part.
Where can people find you online if they want to sort of follow what you're doing?
Thank you. So you can find me between, really my last name is Crazy Unique, because I'm Jewish and the Holocaust and all that, dark joke, but true. My last name is P as in Peter, I as in Igloo, K as in Kangaroo, Stein. If you just type in Rachel Pikstein, you're going to find everything you need. But I am piksteinlab.org. I'm on social media as Rachel Pikstein and Pikstein Lab. I run 2 groups on Facebook, which is Safety is Sexy, as well as Outdoor Cats Are a Problem. Yes, yours too, because I'm an invasive species biologist, so I do that as well. And I'm trying to think, I'm also on Patreon and Instagram. If you just find Pikstein Lab, I'm all there. And a lot of the stuff I do on social media, you can ignore the excessive American politics mixed into some of the platforms. I don't do that with my lab, but my personal profile does a little more of that. But as an environmental scientist, I feel kind of like I have to, they have fired 500,000 scientists since January here, to be fair, in the United States. So I tell people my personal stuff is supposed to be a little bit political for the environmental side and advocacy, but Pikstein Lab stuff is very clean, conservation, environmental, reptiles, reptiles, and I do a little bit of work with inverts, snakes, as well as burrowing owls, actually, which are a native species here in the U.S. They're owls that are yay big and live in holes in the ground. They don't create themselves. They're very unique. They're awake during the day, and they're just silly buddies. And I've been studying them for about 8 years also. So I welcome people to check out my stuff, personal or with the nonprofit, and just get involved. I say join our tribe, get involved in the advocacy, and whether you're local or not, Pikstein Lab does take mentoring opportunities, collaboration opportunities, no cost. I'm happy to connect with citizen scientists, even collaborating on projects or education outreach. If you want free tickets to Phoenix Fan Fusion or Comic-Con and get involved in that big awesomeness I was talking about earlier, we can do free tickets for that. I've got a good amount of power with that. This is my great power, my free tickets to Comic-Con. And yeah, if anybody's interested, please connect, please reach out, don't hesitate. My middle name's Collaboration, and I'm looking to grow the tribe because we want our side, line in the sand to have the people who belong there, and I welcome everybody. So thank you.
No, that's brilliant. Cheers, and thanks again for joining, and thanks everyone who's watched, especially if you watched from the beginning. So, and
I imagine is this going to be posted as well, right? As a link?
Yeah, go get saved to YouTube, and we'll be there for eternity, basically.
Yay! Okay, cool. I know now everybody I knew could join live, so thank you. And
I'll be there for rewatches and stuff, and
awesome.
So thank you, and we'll say good night. Night, everyone.
Cheers.
Bye.